Talking to a couple of you, it's really nice to see everybody here. When it's mandated that you come and listen to me, it makes me feel good. Or maybe the mandate should be taken out, but nonetheless, thanks for coming. The RIO system is what, after a lot of conversations over the past 4 or 5 years, is the system that was decided to be used to collect data so that we can understand better injuries and compare the injuries in the state of Connecticut to the other states around the nation. Those of you that know the RIO system know that it's been up and running. Dawn Comstock, when she was at Nationwide Hospital in Indiana, Ohio, produced this and now has had a huge number of articles written and information that has been generated out of her studies that is very, very useful in allowing us to make some decisions about the safety, the health and safety of the kids that are playing on the fields, courts, and ice around Connecticut, but also around the nation. So the RIO system, I want to see if I can demystify it if you have any concerns about it, because the system itself will trigger, give you questions and trigger you to answer the questions that are necessary and will not force you to answer every single question. So for some of you who have done this already, please talk to everybody at your table who hasn't done it, because it's not that bad. The problem with it is that once you get online and you get going the first couple of times, it looks like there's a million things to click, and there are a million things to click, but you do not need to click them all. So what I'm going to do, and this is a couple things. The handout, first off, I'm not going to follow that handout. That is just a training thing for you. That PowerPoint slides exists online. So if you go to, or if you Google RIO High School Reporting System or the reporting internet online, whatever you want to do, if you get to RIO High School, you'll get to this website and you can just follow it down and the PowerPoint slides are there, and you can actually demo it yourself, which is what I'm going to do for you right now. So this is not going to be an in-depth discussion of this internet website. It is just going to lead you through to show you how easy it is, and then we'll answer questions. So when you get online, and it may take a little while for some of you to get online working through the system and getting a formal password from the folks now in Denver, but once you get that password, you'll come to this, this portion of the website. Once you get to this, and I've already added some in, you'll see that it's all done initially by the date of reporting, so the week or the month or the actual day. So I'm online. This is you're watching me do this live, so you don't need to worry about it. Here we are in the month of May, week 40, so 40th week of the school year, which was 27th of April through the 3rd of May. I'm going to just look and see what's going on that week. So here's the exposure report form, as it's referred to as. And unfortunately, the internet speed here is going to be a little slow, but it'll come up in a minute. Might be able to cheat and go here. So in week 40, I can add in an injury that has occurred in any of the sports that you wish to do at your school. The requirement in the fall of 2015 is that if you're playing football, that you will record injuries. In the sport of football, you do not need to use this for recording injuries in all the other sports. We would encourage you to do so, but you're not required to do so. So if I want to add in, there it is at the top of the list, it's going to look. So boys football, I'm going to add an injury for this particular week. We can add a new injury, for instance here, boys football new injury. I'm going to edit this addition. So really I can create a new injury, so a new player, or I can go back and use a player that's been previously added. I'm going to go back and use a player that I added prior to today. So there's my existing student, football A. And now I'm just going to add the athlete, what year they are in school. We'll assume that this is somebody who's a junior, going to play next year on the team. And on this set of on this particular portion of the site, I really don't need to do anything else other than tell the website what day it occurred. So the week that I'm in, that I'm reporting, was April 27th through the 3rd of May. So if I add in a day during that week, and I can now save this data. If I make a mistake or don't give it enough information, it'll say, wait a minute, you didn't give us all the information that's required. So here you see injury event info. The line, the row that starts with personal data is where you'll see the individual tabs. Injury event info. If you need to add in what level of play this individual was participating in. It's obviously the off season for football. And at any point in time, if you want to, you can stop and say, I've done everything. The computer or the website will tell you, no, wait a minute, you still have to add in more information. So obviously we need to know what the injury is, so that's what this is asking for right now. Sorry. So we're going to assume, unfortunately, that in the off season this individual had a concussion. Just trying to find it here.
First one, head and face.
What's that? I'm sorry?
First one, head and face.
Yeah, it's actually, it'll get there. So as you start to add this information in, the computer itself will realize that if you said that it's a head and face injury, as was just mentioned to me up front, is now we'll get another drop-down menu where you'll actually come to the word concussion, so you have a concussion. And I can stop. I've now recorded everything, except it's going to tell me I have to do whether it was practice or competition. So really what I'm doing, and Fred's whispering to me here, it's on the previous page, as you go through this, all of this information can be added in if you want to. My point is that as you go through this, you do not need to give it everything. So it occurred in, so I need to find event info, practice, sorry. And now that the information for concussion has been added in. So I fumbled through it, maybe intentionally, maybe not, but I fumbled through it, so that information now, football A, with an injury on the 29th of April, that information's been added in. What you'll now have the ability to do, both immediately as well as later on, you'll be able to go back, push up the summary as I just did here, and you'll get a report that you'll know exactly what the injury was, the date it occurred. You do not, for the requirements of the law and the requirements in the fall of 2015, this is all that you'll need to do, and then you can take this information, print it out after a week, a season, or at the end of the year to submit it appropriately. If you have gone through this, and somebody has, for instance, had information added in, and it's not complete, down the left-hand side or column, you'll see a series of insignias. You'll see either an arrow that says that you're check mark, that says that you've completed all the information necessary, or you'll get a stop sign that says you have not completed everything. And again, the computer is set up and the internet website is set up such that every time you are concerned or you don't add information and you need to add something else in, it'll tell you exactly what questions are still in need of being added. So we can do this, and I'm not going to do this to anybody in the crowd, but I could ask anybody to come up right now and probably walk through this, and you'll see how easy it is. We'll go to the week that we're currently in, so week 44. Actually, we're not even there. Exposure report for the week of the 18th through the 24th. And the reason to do this now is to make sure that you realize that there are some additional pieces of information that you'll need to add. For instance, you'll need to add whether or not this is the sport that you're reporting on is going on in season or out of season, and whether or not there are athletes participating. So if there are 50 members of the football team at your school and they have 5 practices, that'll be 250 exposures, which is obviously very important. Obviously in the off season there is no competition going on, and ultimately you can put the number of injuries in either as a number and then go back and look at it, or you can add it up later at the end of the week or the end of the month and go back and add it in. The report that it said here, it didn't like me. It said that I hadn't given it another competitions because it assumes that you're in season all the time. But as you can see, you can move through it without a problem. So in week 43, I just gave the website the information necessary in order to add an injury. Again, boys football. There's, during that week, you can, when you add in the injury, you'll see it, week 43, boys football, a new injury. You're going to edit that one. We'll say that it's somebody new. I've added my new player in. I'll add in what year they are in school. The info, this time they're going to sprain their ankle, we'll assume. It's all right, we'll have them hurt their shoulder instead. Again, I don't need to add in the side. I don't need to do anything else other than go back to say whether it happened, at what level it happened at. It's obviously football, so it's off season again. It's practices. And every time you decide you've had enough of this and you hit the exit and save, if you've given the information that you need to this and you don't need to add any more, down at the bottom, week 43, you'll see that you've added the person identified as football B here in this system. So that last one that I went through seems maybe like it took a while, but that I just added all the information necessary for somebody who had an injury on May, I don't remember what day we put it down, but May 19th we'll assume, so it happened yesterday, and the information is now saved and is able to be done. So I can take you through a series of paces like this just to show you how quickly and simply it can be done, but I don't think that that's the best thing to do. I think instead, the best thing for me to do now is to either let you ask questions or let you play with this. You can, if you have the internet available, you can go online and do demo. So if you go onto the website and just sign in as a password and username as demo, you can do what I'm doing on the board. Yes?
Quick question. I know we are right now just dealing with football. Are we, just for clarification, are we only entering concussions or any type of football injury? And then I guess the question is define the injury.
So, first off, it's all injuries in football is the way we are currently going to do this. So it's not just concussions. When you go to a week, so the first time you enter information for injuries in a particular week, this is what you'll get. So what I just did is went to one of those weeks where no information had been added. And it'll get here exposure report form, and it gives you the definitions that you just requested. So a definition of an injury is anything that causes the missing of one or more practices or games during a given week, and it's listed here. Exposure is obviously the number of individuals that are participating with that team, the number of days that they had practices or games. Does that answer your questions? Yes.
Carl, 3 things. Reiterate, it's free. What's the problem with using a student name? Should we use numbers or names? And how often should it be entered?
So a couple quick things. one of the ways that we decided on the RIO system versus others is the RIO system is provided free of charge to all the high schools in the state of Connecticut. So the only thing that will take money from the schools is internet access and a computer to be able to add the information. It can be done on any internet accessible laptop, desktop, or what have you. So it is free of charge and we'll work you through it. The second thing is that our recommendation to you is that you add this information in once a week. If you do not enter it in once a week, the problem of recall bias and recall issues will become large, and it'll cause some problems both with the ultimate reporting that you are required to do, as well as any kind of validity data, which is ultimately what we're trying to do, is to make some decisions about changes in practices, contact, exposures, etc. And the last thing.
Using the student's name.
And then the next question, a lot of people are asking whether or not you should put somebody's name in here or a number. Once you have entered information into the website, when it gets sent to the server in Denver, it becomes identifiable to you. In other words, they know it came from you, but it is otherwise not identifiable. Therefore, when you enter information, you should decide to either give all of your student athletes in the school a number, or you should go ahead and feel free to put their name in on this site. Because once you enter it in and it is saved and it goes to the server, nobody else will be able to have access to that other than the folks that are running the server and yourself. If some schools have decided to put numbers on and then keep the number locked in a drawer somewhere that identifies each of the students in their school, and certainly that's the safest way to do it. It is not necessary, however, for you to do that. So you can identify individuals by putting a number in or giving them a name. Yes?
Is there a way to have the CAAC roster, if you choose to use the name, forwarded onto this website?
So the question was, can we put the CAAC roster that you have all submitted directly up onto this website? And I don't know the answer. I can look into it. I will give you a guess that it is not going to be possible, just because that would require a lot of word processing on their part in Denver to do this. So I don't believe that's possible, but I'll check. Yes?
A lot of schools have co-ops, and the host school is usually the trainer that is with the kids at that time. When they go to enter, do they enter it under the host school, or do they send the information to the school that they are from, or does it go on both?
So the question is CoOp Teams. The answer is you only need to enter it once. You do not need to enter it twice. And whoever the hosting school is would be my recommendation to you. Certainly that probably, if you're lucky enough to have an athletic trainer with that team, the athletic trainer's school that they are associated with probably should go in that way. But you only need to enter it once. You do not have to do it twice.
You mentioned out of season, so are we monitoring the football during all year round?
So the question is, out of season, are we monitoring concussions out of season? The answer is that if they are having a scheduled practice, if the coach is there in the spring practices, yes. If they are lifting without the coach in the weight room in the winter, no. You do not need to record that. I will tell you, though, that that's going to change, just so you hear it, right? Because the state legislature is very interested in the number of concussions that occur no matter what the cause. But as of right now, only have to enter concussions and injuries that occur with a scheduled practice or game. Yes?
We have the fellow athletic trainers in the room. Some of our concerns are with one athletic trainer in multiple sports, including football, where football is typically a priority. How are we supposed to control the exposure rate documentation? Is this something that coaches should be assisting with? Are you expecting the athletic trainers? And if so, what about the schools that don't have an athletic trainer except for maybe game coverage? And in that case, who's reporting that?
So I think everybody, you were very clear, so I think everybody heard your question, so I won't try to repeat it. But so a couple things. One, athletic trainers at a school will make this system much easier. And in fact, as you go down through this website, when you add it on, it actually has comments like, I was in attendance during the game, referring to the athletic trainer at the game. However, ultimately, it is the athletic director's responsibility to have these forms completed. If the athletic director has the ability to have an athletic trainer add information, So if an athletic director has convinced their school board to hire an athletic trainer, then it should be all fine. But athletic trainers are the ones that are best suited. It is my recommendation from an exposure point of view is that at the end of each week, if athletic trainers are actually in attendance of the practices, then they should be the ones putting in the exposure. So number of practices, number of players on the team. However, if there is not an athletic trainer in attendance of each practice and game, then in those situations, I would suggest that the athletic director utilize the coach for the number of practices they had and the number of players. The number will probably, in those situations, not be perfect. And I appreciate that. But exposure rates are extremely important, as you all know, in concussions. So we need to get us to somehow get a handle of the total exposures that occur in a given week, especially in contact sports. Yes, Eric?
What is the medical committee consider collecting data on which to make educated decisions on what we should do with the medical committee? What do they consider the number of years that would give you significant research to make decisions?
So the question is how many years are we going to need to collect data to make good decisions? One of the reasons 4 years ago we decided to go with RIO is that we will be able to use 10 years worth of RIO data. The problem is in the state of Texas, as for instance, their exposure rate or their method of playing the game of football or whatever differences might occur or exist, it may not be a direct comparison. So it is our belief that in 2 years' time, we will know whether or not the state of Connecticut plays football from a medical point of view the same as the state of Texas. And therefore, if that's true, we can use 10 years of data that has been collected elsewhere to help us make decisions. So that's a great question, and it's very important because certainly 2 years of data only might be a blip, and it would not be something that would be safe to make a decision. So great question and very important that we follow through. Yes.
If an athlete has an injury that's going to keep them out more than 1 week, do you have to enter them in every week that they're missing, such as like an ACL injury or anything like that?
Great question. So the question was, if somebody has had an injury that has kept them out for more than a week, do they get re-added each week? And the answer is no. Once you've added somebody in, you're adding the date of injury, and then ultimately when they return back to play, you go back to that date of injury, you hit edit, and you put in that they've been out for, and I didn't do it, or I started to do it with one of the ones I just added in, but you'll see that it says 2 weeks out, end of season out, something like that. Yes?
During preseason, when there's 2 practices a day, is that counted as 1 exposure grouping or 2?
2. So the question is, if you have 2 practices, if you have double sessions, is that 1 or 2 exposures? And the answer is 2, because those are both practices.
And you're identifying exposures by level.
Not only exposure by actual practice, but by freshman, JV, varsity. I apologize. Yes. So those are differentiated, and you can see that as I went through as to what level they're participating. Yes.
I have exposure questions. I've been doing this. If you have a competition, and say baseball right now, you have 18 kids on the team. They're all warming up, but then only 12 actually compete. How do you report that?
18 players competed.
18 players compete.
That is correct. So it's a great question, but it would be unwieldy to try to say that 9 people played and 11 people played. So competition on the roster, they competed.
So all this data is going to the State Department of Education, right?
It will, yes.
And it goes where?
So initially when you add the information in, it gets placed onto the server that's now housed at the University of Colorado in Denver. It then is going to be queried by us. So in other words, you from your school can go grab that information and look at it at any point in time. And then at the end of the year, once everybody has submitted their information, we will query it as a state. That will be compiled in a report and then sent to the Department of Education.
Who's the we?
The we will be myself as the medical overseer and the CIAC otherwise. Because
Just one doctor?
no, thankfully no.
I just really want to know, like, who takes all the data and synthesizes the data and makes decisions
Well,
based on all that data?
so currently, as a consultant to CIAC and CAS, I, as the chair of the Connecticut State Medical Society Sports Med Committee, I'm the one that's been trying to help to get this up and rolling. That committee within the State Medical Society will be the ones that look at the information, synthesize or make decisions as necessary, but really all we're doing is preparing a consultant's report to hand to the CIAC, which they will then forward to the State Department of Ed. So individual doctors won't be making decisions, if that answers your question. Does that help? I don't think I answered your question though, huh?
I understand where you're coming from.
Okay? Yes?
You mentioned earlier that the legislature is very concerned about concussions no matter where they come from.
Yes.
If I look at the data we've been compiling at our school, I find that there are other sports that have concussion numbers very similar to football. And why are we not recording for all sports then? So that we don't just label football as the bad guy.
So my personal opinion is that you should use this system for all students, all athletes, all levels of competition. So that's my recommendation to you.
Will it be looked at that way? That's the problem.
I don't-
Well, who's going to look at the other sports? Or when you look at the sport, right now it's football. Football, but again, there are other sports, at least in my school, that have significant numbers of concussions that model or resemble football. So shouldn't we be looking at all, if the legislature is truly concerned about the source of all concussion?
So there's no question that all sports have a risk of injury and that the risk of concussion may not be equal in other sports to that of American football, but they certainly is high. What we're going to do is, if you are going to enter, so it's going to be valid data. So if you're going to enter in all sports data will be reviewed. So with that data, if you're going to do that, and it is my personal request that you do so, if you're doing it correctly, we'll look at all the data. But the problem is right now, at least the state does not require it, therefore we can't stand here and tell you that you must do it. Yes?
Just to clarify something, so if we have a football athlete who's also a baseball player, he gets a concussion during baseball season, do I put that in as a football season injury or no?
So if you have a two-sport athlete and they get injured in one sport, does it also qualify as an off-season other sport? No, it does not. Again, we are honestly trying to make this easy, so you only have to add injuries in once. Yes.
On the page before, it had different indicators, red, yellow, green, and blue, I think. What do those mean?
So the indicators on the left side here are little emblems for you to say that you have either not fully completed all the information that is necessary or that you haven't entered anything. For instance, the red exclamation mark really means you haven't entered any data. So that's, you can go down to wherever I just saw that and click delete because that has no data whatsoever. If you see one that's got a yellow exclamation, that means that you've added information, but not all of it's been added in. If you hit that yellow exclamation mark, you get the screen that you see right now, and it's telling you what has not been added. If you have a green check, you can smile.
Yeah. What about the blue one?
The blue one, let's see. Same thing, these were primary, so the blue one is even more important. So the yellow is, we'd like to have you add this, the blue is necessary to save it. Yes?
When you set up your new RIO account, can you customize what information you want to put in every time when you create your new account, so you don't have to filter through all these checks? So that when we do look at the left side of the screen, we can see a green check for the stuff that we just need to put in?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So the question is can we customize the site for you at your school or for the state of Connecticut? And at least at this time, we are not able to do that. So I promise you though, as much as I fumbled through it, and I did this intentionally, not having a kind of a patented person, because when you go through this, what you'll do 2 or 3 times is what I just did. And then the clicks of what you need to add will be much quicker. It takes about 3 minutes for me to add somebody in.
And I applaud the efforts on your behalf trying to come up with this data to make good decisions, but it seems like we've already made some drastic changes in football practices based upon no data at all. And evidence-based practice is a huge part of medical research and practice. So I'm surprised that we've made these changes. We've kind of put the cart before the horse, so to speak. And I know there's been a lack of response from the state on that. We're doing this, and I think this is good in the end. But why, and upon what data did we make all these changes for that we're going to be implementing this season? Where's the data for all that?
So decisions that have been made about changes in practices, a lot of it is based on non-Connecticut high school data. There's no question about that. And evidence-based practices.
Can you share that?
What data?
Can you share that data with everyone?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I'll have to work with CAAC and find a way to get it to you. But, sure, absolutely. But the answer is that we don't have data. So any changes that were made for a varied reasons, not just medical reasons. They were made for other reasons, calendar causes. So we've made a lot of changes. The information that we had available to us to make those decisions certainly can be made available to you. Yes.
Do you ever know if there's a smartphone app or an app for tablet? I know, like, sometimes we have multiple games in a day or, like, maybe varsity. It seems kind of not, it seems more beneficial to be able to do it right then and there as opposed to waiting.
So the question is, are there smartphone apps or is there a tablet app? And the answer is right now there is not. They're working hard to do that, but they do not have something for your iPhone to be able to be used. Okay? As long as you have internet access, you can do it, right? So I think that maybe was what you're being shown right now. If your tablet has internet access, you can do it. It's because it's just a website. Yes. Yes.
I have a question. How the protected health information that we're collecting and putting into this software, are we violating HIPAA?
No,
Or is there a HIPAA waiver we have to implement in our documentation?
So great question. Are you violating HIPAA or FERPA laws and legal situations? The answer is no. And the reason is because this is a HIPAA compliant website. So once you've added the data, now I will tell you that most of the individuals in the state, there's 24 schools that are currently using the RIO system and have done it at least for the last half year, if not longer. They have almost all decided to assign a number at their school to an individual, lock that list of athletes and their number, and put them in by number. And that is, certainly the website will allow you to do that, and that's your choice at your school. However, once you've added data and submitted it, it is inside a secure website. You do not need to worry about it further. Yes?
Would it matter the number specifically? Like you said, put the name, right? So if John Smith on September 12th gets an ankle sprain, misses 2 days, we put that in. On October 12th, he sprains his other ankle, misses 2 days. Do we have to put his name in, or can we put, like, you know, I don't know, ABC HS or ABC High School 01, and then assign him ABC HS 72 for the October 12th.
Right.
Injury. Can we do that?
So the answer, the question is, can you assign a new number to a new injury? And you absolutely can do. So that every single injury that occurs can have a totally separate file if you wish to do it. You can also do it, as you saw as I put in football B, you can go back and use the previously added or generated name and number file, if you will, and put in the second injury for that individual. You can do it either way. Yes?
Just get some clarification on it. For our school use, and you may have answered this already, for our school use, can we go back in as a school and get data on there to find out, one, how many concussions we had, two, how many sprains did we have, et cetera? We could do that as a school?
Yes, individual schools will have access to all of their data either at the end of the week, end of the month, end of the season, or end of the year. Yes. So the reporting requirements of, in this case, concussions to the state will be able to be done for yourself, as well as more elaborate data, if you wish it, to make individual school decisions. Yes. Yes.
I mean, you know, we're way past the time here where, you know, this is another mandate coming down to us that, you know, and we all understand the reason for it and the validity and the importance. But we're way past the time where athletic trainers should be mandated to be full-time. My question is, what sort of work is being done at the state level to make that happen? Because that's obvious. That's got to happen.
So your point about having athletic trainers mandated at each of the schools.
direction so we can do this the right way.
Right. So I don't think there's anybody involved in the health and safety of athletes in the state of Connecticut that would disagree with what you just said. Nobody would. The problem is that individual school systems have a financial burden, and that's where it comes down to. So we are doing on a regular basis. We talk to, the CIAC does, the State Medical Society does, everybody that I know of has repeatedly talked up, as you say, up the pathway, up to try to talk, to convince administrators.
Been going on for over 35 years.
I agree.
We're going to go, this is going to happen in every sport. I think everybody in this room understands that at some point.
I would agree.
It's going to be
I would agree. I would agree. I wish I had an easy answer for you. I agree with your statement.
Well, as medical advisors, those recommendations should be being made. This is obvious. It's like an elephant in the room.
The recommendations are made on a consistent basis, more than once, often 2 or 3 times in a month. Yes?
Question about the exposures. Are we supposed to be tracking and reporting exposures even when there aren't injuries? Because it would seem like what you're trying to collect is the number of injuries compared to the number of exposures, but if we don't have any injuries, we might have a week of practice, tons of exposures, no injuries. So is that something that's supposed to be reported regardless of injuries?
So the question is if you go through a week that has exposures and no injuries, what do you need to do? So what I would say, especially for right now, because we're talking about football, is each week, when you get to a week, hit the exposure form and it asks you for exposures.
Can you just show that once
Sure.
again?
Okay. So
that one right there, the exposure report form for the week?
Exactly right. So here's week 41. Week 41 has no current added injuries. Whoops. So this is what comes up. The very first time you go to any week, this is what you'll see. Okay. And so as you go down through this, what you'll be able to do is to add the exposures. You do not need to put number of injuries down each week, because obviously, if you could write 0 if you wish when you get here. So you will, if you hit that week, you will do this. Okay. The flip side is also true, though, that if you don't add exposures, we can go back in and do it at the end of the year or what have you.
So if you keep scrolling down there, you're going to see all the other sport options?
That's correct, yes.
And those are customizable to our school, or those are kind of basic template?
This is a basic template, so you do not need to say no, 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 or not applicable. You don't need to say that. Okay. You can just say anywhere that you say, for instance, you have girls track and field at your school and you say yes, it'll ask for exposures. And you put it in there. But if you, for instance, had girls cross country and you don't have that at your school, and you don't need to click anything.
And so I would think the accuracy of that data, ballparks are okay here, because to have somebody say, I've got 200 girls on my track team, but 171 were there today. That's just. So I'm going
to take this. There's no reason for. I think these are all great questions, and I think you all have an understanding. And I want to maybe end with this thought, right? So one of the questions is that if you add exposures as a ballpark. So in other words, if you add 50 members of the football team, 5 practices, 250 exposures, and you don't subtract the 20 kids that were injured on Thursday, which means now it's 230 exposures. You don't do that simple change. The exposure rate changes, the validity of the data changes. Absolutely correct. So what has happened inside RIO when they're trying to make decisions is that the RIO system, because of their NIH grants that they have, does have a limited amount of money to compensate individuals for putting in data. So in the state of Connecticut last year, they were in need of boys lacrosse data. And so many of the individuals in this room signed up to give RIO data that included not only track and field, not only softball and baseball, but also boys lacrosse, and got a stipend at the end of the season for exactly this reason. So there is limited funds available for those that are going to be more exact about exposure rate. And that's where that idea of grant money comes in. If you decide to sign up for that, you will get a phone call and an email every Friday or Monday, whenever you choose to do it, to kind of follow through to make sure you're doing your job. But that is important to get valid data. Yes.
same screen. Well, see, I guess my point being, when you put in an injury for an individual, you put their level of play, JV, varsity, freshman. Here, though, it says practice and exposure. That's not by individual level. So you may have, you know, if you're counting up how many freshman practices you have, JV practices, varsity practices, how many exposures are you putting in there?
So it's a great point, and I hadn't thought about that. I'll have to get back to you. The answer is right now, this is done for, well, I guess we just need to make a decision. This is for varsity only right now. So I'll tell you that, and I'll double check to find out. But I've never thought about that. That's a great question. The injury reporting at the end is more important for this.
Okay, let's get you on.
So I know this is not something you guys are all looking forward to. I know this is not something that you may think is the best idea in the world, but I will tell you that for the last 6 years of being in charge of the Committee on Sports Medicine at the State Medical Society level, that every time we've been asked a question, we've said, this is what we believe, but we don't have Connecticut data. So this information that you all are going to be now unfortunately mandated to add is going to be the beginning of us making decisions and coming up with recommendations for the health and safety of the students. So I know it's not something that you're looking forward to doing, but I do appreciate everybody's effort and time. I'm more than happy to help going forward and through the CIAC and through the Connecticut Children's Medical Center. Anytime you have a question or concern, I'm more than happy to try to answer those questions and help you through this. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.